Love history? Subscribe and explore the stories that shaped our world.
Welcome. To understand the map of modern Europe, we must look back to the early 19th century. At that time, there was no single nation-state called Germany. Instead, Central Europe was a fragmented patchwork of independent kingdoms, duchies, and principalities. For over 1,000 years, many of these states had been loosely associated under the Holy Roman Empire. However, the invasion of the French Empire under Napoleon Bonaparte shattered this ancient structure. In 1806, following a massive military defeat, the Holy Roman Empire was formally dissolved. Napoleon reorganized these German states into the Confederation of the Rhine, inadvertently planting the seeds of German nationalism. Under French hegemony, a shared desire to expel the invaders began to bring these fractured states together in a common cause. Following Napoleon's ultimate defeat at Waterloo in 1815, a victory in which Prussian troops played a critical role, the map was redrawn yet again at the Congress of Vienna. The Congress established the German Confederation, a loose association of 39 states intended to replace the old empire. This new organization was headed by the Austrian Empire, reflecting the traditional dominance of the Habsburg dynasty. However, this arrangement created a fundamental problem known as German dualism, a rivalry for leadership between the two most powerful German states, Austria and the rising Kingdom of Prussia. This rivalry would define the decades to come, as the question remained, if Germany were to unite, would it be a greater Germany led by Austria or a lesser Germany led by Prussia?
While the German Confederation was politically dominated by Austria, economic forces were quietly shifting the balance of power toward Prussia. In the years following 1815, the region experienced the Vormärz era, a time of censorship and police states, but also of growing liberalism and nationalism. The most significant step toward unity was not political, but economic. In 1818, Prussia initiated a customs union, which evolved into the Zollverein. This union removed tariff barriers between member states, facilitating trade and economic integration. Crucially, Austria was excluded from the Zollverein. By 1836, all states south of Prussia had joined this economic bloc, linking their financial interests to Berlin rather than Vienna. As railroads began to crisscross the German lands in the 1830s and 40s, they physically connected the German people, reducing the costs of transport and fostering a sense of national cohesion. The economist Friedrich List famously called the railways and the customs union Siamese twins, born together to modernize the nation. Political attempts to unify Germany from the bottom up came to a head during the revolutions of 1848. Liberals gathered at the Frankfurt Parliament to draft a constitution and offered the title of emperor to the Prussian king, Frederick William IV. However, the king refused to accept a crown from the gutter, meaning from the people rather than the princes, and feared military intervention from Austria or Russia. The revolution failed and the old order was restored. It became clear to many observers that German unity would not be achieved through speeches and parliamentary debates, but through power.
By the 1860s, the Prussian state was transforming. King Wilhelm I, along with his Minister of War Albrecht von Roon and Chief of Staff Helmuth von Moltke, sought to reform and expand the Prussian army. This provoked a constitutional crisis. The Liberal Parliament refused to fund the military budget. To break the deadlock, King Wilhelm appointed Otto von Bismarck as minister-president in September 1862. Bismarck was a practitioner of realpolitik, politics based on power and pragmatism rather than ideology. He famously appeared before the Budget Committee to stress the need for military preparedness. In a speech that would define his legacy, Bismarck declared,
The position of Prussia in Germany will not be determined by its liberalism, but by its power. Not through speeches and majority decisions will the great questions of the day be decided. That was the great mistake of 1848 and 1849, but by iron and blood. This phrase, blood and iron, became the symbol of his policy. Bismarck understood that the dualism with Austria had to be resolved. He recognized that for Prussia to lead a united Germany, Austria had to be pushed out of the German sphere. Furthermore, he realized that the disparate German states would never unify voluntarily. They needed a common enemy to rally behind. Through diplomatic skill and manipulation, Bismarck set out to engineer the wars that would forge the nation.
The path to unification was paved by three specific wars. The first conflict arose in 1864 over the northern duchies of Schleswig and Holstein. Prussia allied with Austria to defeat Denmark, securing these territories. However, Bismarck used the joint administration of these lands to provoke friction with his ally, Austria. This tension culminated in the Austro-Prussian War of 1866. Bismarck ensured that Prussia had an ally in Italy, forcing Austria to fight on two fronts. The war was decided at the Battle of Königgrätz, where the modernized Prussian army, utilizing superior rail networks and the needle gun, decisively defeated the Austrians. The consequences were profound. The German Confederation was dissolved. Austria was excluded from German affairs, securing the Lesser Germany solution. Prussia annexed territories like Hanover and Frankfurt, forming the North German Confederation under its own leadership. However, the southern states, Bavaria, Württemberg, and Baden, remained independent and reluctant to accept Prussian dominance. To unite them, Bismarck needed an external threat. He found it in France. In 1870, a diplomatic crisis emerged regarding the Spanish throne. A Hohenzollern prince was offered the crown, which France viewed as a threat of encirclement. The French ambassador demanded that King Wilhelm renounce any such claim forever. Wilhelm refused and sent a telegram to Bismarck describing the encounter. Bismarck edited this Ems telegram to make the refusal sound abrupt and insulting, then released it to the press. The public was outraged and demanded war. France declared war in July 1870. As Bismarck hoped, the southern German states, bound by treaties and inflamed by national sentiment, joined the North German Confederation to fight the French. The efficient Prussian military machine overwhelmed the French forces. On September 1, 1870, at the Battle of Sedan, the Prussians captured Emperor Napoleon III and his entire army. The Second French Empire collapsed, and the path to German unity was clear.
The siege of Paris continued into the winter, but the political conclusion of the war had already been decided. On January 18, 1871, a date chosen to coincide with the 170th anniversary of the coronation of the first Prussian king, the German princes and military commanders gathered. They did not meet in Berlin, but in the Hall of Mirrors at the Palace of Versailles, the very heart of French power. There, Wilhelm I was proclaimed German emperor. This act symbolized the transfer of continental dominance from France to the new German Empire. The Treaty of Frankfurt followed in May 1871. France was forced to pay a massive indemnity and most painfully ceded the regions of Alsace and Lorraine to Germany. This annexation laid the foundation for resentment that would last well into the 20th century. The new German Empire was a federal state consisting of 25 constituent entities, but it was decisively shaped by Prussia. The King of Prussia was the emperor, and the minister-president of Prussia usually held the office of imperial chancellor. While it had a parliament elected by universal male suffrage, the system remained authoritarian, with the chancellor answerable to the emperor, not the people. The Unification of 1871 solved the problem of German dualism by excluding Austria, creating a powerful nation-state in the center of Europe. However, as Karl Marx noted, this unity was achieved at the expense of freedom, creating a military despotism cloaked in parliamentary forms. The legacy of Bismarck's blood and iron had forged a great power, but it also established an internal political structure fraught with contradictions that would haunt Europe for decades to come.